Assalamu
Assalamu
alaikum,
alaikum
madam.
everyone. Can you hear us?
I can hear you.
Okay, that's great. Everybody else can also hear me. Type yes in the chat box if you guys can hear us. Asad Ijaz, Aisha, Faisal, Hasiba, anyone who could type yes if they can listen to me.
Hassan, please just let me know when to begin, right?
Yeah, sure, I will, Jamshed. I just would like to have this confirmation that people can hear me.
Mhm.
Uh, Once again, everybody on this call, on this webinar, just give your hands up by typing yes. You guys can hear me loud and clear. Okay, that's nice. So now people can hear me. Thank you very much once again for taking time out. Uh, we would try our level best to make this time worth a while for all of you. I would not take much longer to introduce the speaker for today's session. He is Mr. Jamshed Hayat, and he is at the moment working with PwC and will is on an assignment in Jeddah right now, and he is delivering this session from there. So Mr. Jamshed has a working experience of more than a decade in different sectors like FMCG, utilities, construction, healthcare, pharmaceutical, textile. He has worked with global, local teams of various sizes. He has also had a very good experience of working with transnational virtual teams as well. So the reason of requesting him to deliver this session on this very important topic was that he has hands-on experience during these 10 years of dealing so many recruits, dealing so many affiliates, dealing so many trainees. And since he himself is an ACCA member, so he has a very good idea of what it takes to become an ACCA affiliate and how to progress further. So since one advantage is that he has been through this journey himself, second advantage is that for a long time he's been with the big four, one of the big four. And the third advantage is that he has a good experience of managing so many recruits and trainees during his career across different sectors. So today's topic, although it is based on a very renowned and famous report by ACCA, which is Professional Accountants, the Future, you would already have heard about this report a lot of times. But today the conversation is specifically designed for you guys. And by I mean designed is that the conversation will be such that how you can have these conversations with the students during the classrooms. So without any further ado, I will now hand over to Mr. Jamshed. Thank you very much once again for your time, Mr. Jamshed. Over to you. Please take over. Thank you.
Thank you, Hassan, and thank you for the nice introduction. First of all, I just would like to begin by saying Assalamu alaikum and good afternoon, everyone. I truly feel humbled because you guys are the teachers, for instance, you're the tutors. I remember back in the day, it's been like around 11 or 12 years since my journey with ACCA began. This was around 2008 and it ended with 2013. So I don't really feel qualified, for instance, when we talk about the technical aspects or even the ethical considerations, for instance, because what you guys are doing, you guys are pretty much doing an amazing job. The passing rate for ACCAs, particularly in Pakistan, for instance, is pretty high. I myself am can vouch to that front. Hassan and team reached out to me a while back, a few weeks back, and like he stated, for instance, the purpose of this entire session today is just to have a little, let's suppose, I don't want to use the word. Uh, is basically to have a little confirmation or a kind of an integration in which we talk about the essential gaps, which I particularly from an employer perspective or a recruiter perspective, and even from a manager perspective face with the incoming batches of ACCA. Hassan stated that I am with the with Big Four already. So one of my engagements with the Big Four and my company is to actually handle new recruits and have their onboarding sessions and deliver basically to them about our values, what we stand for instance, the work considerations, ethics, and what are the essential skill sets in order for them to exceed or succeed, for instance, within the company and excel otherwise as well. So this was the basic purpose of this session, just to have a walkthrough of some of the key drivers of change, for instance, in the future skills which accountants would be needed. And I'll try to keep this session very much centered to my own practical experiences. It would not be, and my own expectations, for instance, what I want, or for instance, any recruiter for that perspective might want from the potential ACCA candidates. So let me just go ahead and begin with certain skill sets. I was already given a framework which is backed by ACCA's research into it. There are like 7 quotients which are of fundamental importance, which I would be addressing over here. My approach, for instance, to this entire session would first of all begin with a case study. Like I said, I would want to keep things very practical over here. Whatever you hear from me would be basically a recruiter's perspective. This, like Hassan stated, I've actually managed, or I've actually had the opportunity to work across boundaries, across different organizations and different continents, across different cultures, and whatever I've gathered over my almost a decade's years of experience. So I've tried incorporating some of those things into play. Of course, you guys already are dealing with the students for over a decade now yourselves. So this would not be to challenge it, but just to align ourselves on maybe together see how we can inculcate or better inculcate these skills, which makes the lives of new ACCA students, for instance, a lot more easier in at least the top tier consulting firms, for instance. So, as a broad synopsis, for instance, what I'll be discussing over here would be some of the key components from, again, ACCA's research. And I'll be addressing particularly areas which includes intelligence, emotional intelligence, creative, vision, digital, and the experience perspective. Uh, so according to us, for instance, according to me, I'll just straight away go into these professional quotients one by one. Just give me a second. Yeah. So for instance, this is an area where you guys already excel, right? And there's no doubt or there's no second opinion on the fact that whenever ACCA students are coming into any organization, for instance, I've had the opportunity or the privilege of working with a few of the big organizations, not just the big fours, but otherwise as well in the corporate side. And either way, I've noticed that the technical skills, for instance, are up to the par, number one. And what do I mean by technical skills? I'll actually elaborate that in a bit as well. I'm particularly focusing on the knowledge aspect, not the other skills. And I understand from my earlier conversations as well and the limitations of the ACCA's delivery model that how to go ahead and incorporate those. So that is a separate discussion for a separate session. But on the knowledge component, I mean, these people are up to par in respect to their accounting knowledge. I mean, they are up to the standard. And even when it comes to some of the ethical considerations, they have a knowledge, and those things automatically have been inculcated into them through the ACCA's own subject matter content as well. And of course, when you guys deliberate on those in your classroom sessions too. But then the next areas, for instance, would be the intelligence component, which I'll be specifically addressing, and I'll actually go slide by slide, and I'll tell you what do I mean, and how do I perceive, for instance, this thing. Of course, every other person might feel or perceive it from a different perspective, but this would be my understanding of these components as well. So then we'll be addressing emotional intelligence, which is a paramount and it's imperative that all of those students, and it's basically a differentiating factor. And most of the cases, for instance, is the single most deciding factor, which decides whether you'll be excelling within your current roles in your current organizations and overall in your career and life as well. So emotional intelligence for me is personally very, very, very crucial, and something I believe we can work upon during our classroom sessions as well. So then the next would be the digital. Again, this is an area, for instance, in which I primarily am very much involved. I'll just provide you with a little walkthrough of what my current roles had been or in the past too. So they've been very much technology centric. And so I'm a big uh, supporter of accountants embracing technology, but I will have a separate slide on that one as well. And finally, we'll see from my own personal experiences, what are the thoughts, observations, and how I feel. I mean, if these certain things can be addressed during our classroom sessions by our tutors, how it can help ACCA students, recruits, and make their journey easier. Because of course, I mean, first impressions are last impressions in most of the cases. I mean, if in my own personal experience, if they're essentially lacking on certain skills which have more to do with their soft skills rather than hardcore skills, the chances of them succeeding within the firm, within the organizations where they're in existing departments and divisions become very slim. So I'll just be addressing those two. Moving on. So before I start, I'll just want to give you a very technical insight into my role, just a high-level synopsis of the current roles I've addressed. And for instance, then you'll know whatever my thoughts, whatever my experiences are coming, it's coming from those practical experience assignments. So first of all, so I started with the PwC, Ferguson and Company in Lahore, I mean, in the end of early early February 2012. And before that, so I had a few roles as well. I'll deliberate on those two for like a year and a half. But my top tier assignments started when I joined A. Ferguson and Company, right? And ever since, my role was into a very technology centric role. I mean, at the time, in Ferguson had just started inducting ACCAs into their current division of ERP and technology centric roles. We were all very skeptical on those. Nonetheless, fast forward 8 years almost, I've been very much in those technology centric roles, and the kind of assignments I've held ever since have been related or very much centered into technology and finance consulting. So when I mean that, when I say that, for instance, what I mean is we'll be discussing about how digital and work with my own work experiences, how those things have shaped, and how do I feel the industry is moving forward, and what are the roles which are or values, or for instance, at least the mindset that needs to be changed and inculcated at least at a classroom level, and how this will help students excel. So I've predominantly held very much finance consult roles into finance consulting, which have a very dominant feature of technology in it. And what I do as part of my even current role is risk management. When I talk about risk management, I'm talking about financial risk management. I'm talking about technology's role into abetting and facilitating in risk management, for instance, right? So then, and one of my roles is also delving into management consulting. So these are the three areas where I've had my core experience in. I've had stints in assurance as well, in taxation too, and I've got stints in otherwise hardcore accounting areas as well. I've actually led teams in the P2P domain, which is procure to pay domain. So I've got a holistic knowledge of accounting, assurance, finance, consulting, as well as taxation. So I'll just try to dwell on those over the course of my session. But moving on, I tried incorporating this case study. Why? Because I'll just walk you through a rough kind of a situation or a very practical situation which we feel or face every day. I feel primarily it might not be the same or true for people who are taking up roles in assurance or taxation, but what I do or my role actually is very challenging in terms of since it's finance consulting, it has a lot of components, and I feel primarily, I mean, ACCA students and affiliates members, they're very well positioned into taking up these roles as well, which is something so I'm kind of gonna make a roadmap over here as well at the end, how and why do I feel that this is a new area and avenue where teachers really need to start inculcating into the minds of the students that they just should not aim for assurance or taxation related roles. They should actually try taking up roles in finance consulting, technology consulting. It's far more fulfilling and holistically incorporates all of the above sections as well. But nonetheless, So if you can read my, if you can see my screen, I've clearly stated a client goal, for instance, in any case, even in my current organization, for instance, so we will be given a goal, a target state, for instance, which we have to achieve. It could be in terms of an advice, since I'm taking up a consulting role, so it's very much related to advisory as well. Uh, it could be related to, for instance, chalking out a business applications landscape. It could be the target business application landscape where the organization wants to go to, or the achieve basically that particular state. And I'm talking, when I talk about business applications landscape, I'm talking about very much finance and accounting relating applications. So just to be clear over here, I'm talking about ERP systems, enterprise resource planning systems, which holistically covers all domains of finance, accounting, risk management, and of course facilitates management with their information reporting as well. So it's a holistically managed information systems. So this is a sample client goal in which, let's suppose, an ABC Foundation has ambitions and wants to, for instance, reduce or extreme poverty worldwide. And one of the organizations, for instance, has asked this particular company to basically design a basic financial services offerings for inhabitants of remote communities in Pakistan. So this is a very much you can say it's kind of a role or a kind of an observation or a goal which we tend to see every day in my particular domain. All right, I've tried chalking out a description of the situation in which I'm talking out what are the roadblocks, what are the challenges which there are in order to achieve this target state, target goal. And so this is just a description of the situation. What I'm trying to get to, or will get to, is the intelligence component, which I'll be deliberating upon very shortly. How and why do I what do I expect from my ACCS recruits, and how we can help develop basically a problem solving and mindset, and basically help them solve real life problems, which is a sample case study over here, and how it will facilitate them into becoming, let's suppose, more useful and productive for the society in their current roles. So then this is the requirement. So what we have to do is we have to basically investigate and assess the possibility of using ABC or XYZ network to provide a basic set of financial services to supplement the limited number of national bank branches. So in a nutshell, if I say that, for instance, there's this one company and it needs to basically come up with a solution how to facilitate people with services, financial services at a grassroots level in rural areas of Pakistan, provided that they do not have um access to local banks, which might be far away. And so this is something which I'm dwelling on my own past experience as well. This is pretty much the model or a standard case study from any financial services company in Pakistan, be it Easy Pesa or be it Jazz Cash. I myself was with Telenor, so I mean I know these are the kind of roles in which accountants get involved in practical life. I mean it's in consulting side at least. I mean not in the assurance or taxation side, but at least in the consulting side, this is the information which you have. Now, the point I'll try to draw on is basically the intelligence component. I will, of course, for the sake of this presentation, it will come a bit down. But what I want you guys to understand over here is that so the requirement is very clear. It's right in front of you. Candidates need to basically draw out conclusions in the practical world. Like, of course, I understand I've passed my P3 case study exam as well, and others too. I mean, we get a lot of information, but something I want to dwell on over here is back in the days, my teachers, for instance, and I took this part very seriously. They used to say that, let's suppose, agar kuch nahi aata, to you need to take assumptions and move forward. That's how I cleared my P4 paper, which is financial management, right? That's how I pretty much cleared my P3 paper. So basically, what I'm trying to say is that component of assumptions, that logical and thinking mindset, is something which starts at the grassroots level in the classroom. And this is where I developed. So why did I take up roles in financial consulting, for instance? Just so I address it over here, I ended up scoring around 73 marks. Like, yeah, it was 73 marks in P3 business consulting, and I dreaded P2 accounting. So that is where I pretty much knew where my skill set lies, where my forte lies. And so naturally I of course took up a role of assurances and then accounting for a year and a half. But On the first opportunity, for instance, I literally shifted to finance consulting, and ever since it's been an amazing ride. So point I'm trying to make over here is, and this is something which will come down the lane as well, it's at the classroom level, maybe for some students, when they start deciding their career paths as well, when they start realizing where our target competencies lies, they start discovering as well. So the role of teacher over here is very, very, very important. My tutor stated this thing and it helped me pass my exam. Taking assumptions, if I just try to make it a bit more relevant and relatable for you guys, is I literally in my P4 paper, I literally every other calculation, let's suppose starting from sales and figures calculations, I literally took assumptions on those. Everything. And for instance, it was a 3 mark calculation, I still remember, and I took assumption and I never wasted time and I moved forward and I ended up clearing those exams, right? uh, so this is something which helped me in my practical world as well. So as you can see, you have a requirement now, you need to draw out reasoned analysis. You need to come up with, let's suppose, target questions such as what are the benefits that might come from providing financial services via the XYZ network. All right. And then I've chalked out a few other questionnaires as well. Like, for instance, for the Pakistani rural population, how much time, effort it spends with the benefit recipient save through the XYZ network, for instance, and then so onwards. I mean, these are the kind of questions from a Pakistani rural population perspective, from the government national perspective, national bank's perspective, etc. If you're not coming up with these kind of questions, if you're not asking the right questions, you won't be able to draw out a reasoned analysis. You might not even exceed in this role or basically survive in this role. So it's imperative that once we are addressing the P3 component, the paper component, and then if I correctly recall, there was a case study, there is a case study in P2 as well, which is very much centered around accounting. And then there's of course a case study in P4 and then P5 as well. Uh, those case studies are actually there to help inculcate our or stimulate our ability to ask questions, our ability to draw out a reasoned analysis. And then there are certain hard level skills as well, which I really want you guys to focus on, because those are the skills which are very pertinent over here. In this entire scenario, we might just be getting, let's suppose, 10 or 15 minutes to come up with our reasoned analysis and then start asking the right questions in a practical case, in a practical world. So then those are the things which I believe primarily should start right when our, let's suppose, if not at a fundamental level, at least from the professional level onwards. So these are the kind of questions which you need to ask as a professional. So this is like a, from a business perspective, I will address this as well. I just wanted to give you kind of a semblance of an idea how things primarily, you of course are very used to teaching students case studies in the classrooms, for instance. I mean, this is kind of a real life situation as well. A lot of you might already have information or a description of this as well. And this is hardcore, let's suppose, finance related aspects as well. So for instance, in addition to whatever questions they asked, they need to ask for, let's suppose, finance related questions, which could be, let's suppose, the costing aspect to this, right? And then the kind of in an interview, for instance, in finance consulting, it's imperative that you get this study and then you ask the right questions and then you come up with the right, let's suppose, a framework of how you want to, an assessment framework basically of how you want to go about addressing those questions. So I've actually included a section in which I stated that interview can provide you with the following information if requested, and which is, let's suppose, you can assume the population of Pakistan is, let's suppose, 100 million. And then you can, of course, assume then within the family in Pakistan, there are 4 members on average. Now, this second question is something which is my own personal experience. Like, I was sitting in an interview, and this is literally the kind of question, the kind of assumption I actually had to take. I've included that question down the lane as well. So I'll just address that. So this was just a synopsis of the kind of case study or the actual real life situation which we'll be getting. All the questions won't be there. So basically, you need to start inculcating in the minds of the students that, in the practical world, you'll just be given a target goal by the client. You'll just be given some information of the current challenges and the organization structure and how they are facilitating and whatever decisions have been made. And then it's up to the consultant to start asking the right questions and start finding the solutions to those questions. And if he needs additional information in terms of accounting, in terms of finance, for instance, business knowledge, for instance, and obviously common sense as well. Let's suppose, I mean, the second part is you can assume that a family in Pakistan have 4 members, let's suppose. So these are things which I believe on a personal level, for me, it started when I sat for my or started preparing for my P3 exam. My tutor literally inculcated some of the things. Even in my P4 exam, for instance, I was told to take a lot of assumptions, not to be stuck around. This is something you guys already communicate to your students and your audience as well every day. I'm pretty sure because it was communicated to me. I just want you guys to also tell them that the information might not be complete. You need to have a questioning mindset. In terms of questioning mindset, you need to actually ask the right questions, number one, and then you need to draw out a reasoned analysis on the basis of that questions on those questions. It's not important to have the right solution then and there. What gets judged, at least in an interview, is how you approach a problem, is how you are approaching, uh, let's suppose, a drafting and assessment framework, and how you're approaching a solution. That is the key over here, and I cannot emphasize it more. In ACCA, which is why I've been pretty much trained, and my educational qualifications, for instance, span and started off with the American schooling and then went into the British schooling. So, for instance, in those of these schoolings, minus, let's suppose, some of the Pakistani variants, it's the actually the process that matters more rather than the end result or the solution. So the answer, uh, like I've been told in my P7 exam, in my, let's suppose, back in the days it was F7. I'm not sure if it's still the same. It's reporting and then P2 reporting as well. I was told it does not matter that your balances at the end of the day match. What matters is that the stage-wise calculation which you have done, and you need to show workings of those calculations. So that thought process is something which ACC as a qualification and as a body is very much interested in, rather than the end solution. And being a Pakistani myself and knowing the kind of educational framework and how our mentality works, I believe that it's the end solution which we are emphasizing more on rather than our thought process. So by every hook and crook, we just need to get to the end result. It does not matter what is the thought process. And when I was preparing for my P2 exam as well, I still recall, I was studying in a group. We were a bunch of 5 friends, for instance. We used to study together, and so a lot of my friends used to actually look at the solution, and it's a standard practice. You won't be surprised over here. They used to look at a solution, and they used to look at, let's suppose, how what's the final answer, and then they used to drive out analogies and basically a reasoning explanations of how this end result has been achieved, rather than applying to achieve a result, for instance, and focusing on the process itself. This is something which I did not do on most of the occasions, and I have benefited from it ever since, at least in the finance consulting role. So this was just a quick synopsis and a quick overlook, and just to give you of how things are very much there in the practical world. At least this is the situation I feel and I faced in my over 20 clients portfolio which I've serviced so far in my career. And you do not have the information. You need to ask the right questions. You would just be in a meeting with the financial controller or the CFO or the CEO, anyone who is in charge of the engagement, and he'll just be walking you through his current challenges. If you are not asking the right information, you're not extracting the right if you're not asking the right questions, you're not extracting the right information, you won't be able to come up with the right analysis, and then you're not worth the big bucks or the big rupees, for instance, they pay us for what the work for the work we do. It's a little different than assurance, where you have a set of standards which you have to achieve, and you have a framework which is very much there. So, I mean, we can talk about individual roles in the experience section over here as well. So, well, I never extrapolated on this section. Reason being because you guys already excel in these. The technical and the ethical competencies is something you're very much embedded. I know, I mean, it was embedded in me, so I can personally relate on my experience. Uh, ACC already has certain ethical frameworks and standards. For instance, when it comes to professional skepticism and upholding independence and integrity. So, for instance, this is something you guys naturally do. I mean, on a practical front, I can relate. I mean, there's not much you can do rather than other than just emphasizing on these things a bit more. I will come on the integrity part and the professional skepticism part, I would like to discuss that under the experience section again, because I've been burnt many times as a recruiter and as a manager as well. And there have been cases in which we have even referred to the ACCA for the code of conduct. So, I mean, this is something which I believe should start from the classroom, and teachers can play a very significant part when it comes to upholding commitments, integrity, and applying professional skepticism and judgments. So, well, this is something which we'll dwell on. Before any further ado, I'll just move on to the components, the drivers of change, for instance, which I feel or are the core agenda of this particular session, and we need to dwell on a bit more. So, the intelligence aspect is there. We have already discussed, and we know that's the ability to acquire and use thinking, reasoning, solving problems. I've already discussed this in my case study in a bit detail. Just to be sure, there are certain things I'm looking forward to. I mean, this is just a detailed listing from my case study. It's basically an inference over there. In my particular role, at least, and this is something which is very much relevant for tax and assurance as well, because I've held roles there and I've held jobs in even project management side, which is a non-technical role, just entails stakeholder management and people management. Uh, so some of my rough things, which I could at least which I at least feel that could be inculcated by you people or could be talked about by you people, which are tutors, in shaping how a student learns, because he is at a very nascent stage. Whenever a ACCA's model in Pakistan, I was having a discussion with Hassan yesterday as well. It's basically in taking school leavers, right, out of their matriculation and passing ONA levels, right, exams. So it's not the university leavers who have already been inculcated with a few of these skills already, right? So at that particular point in time, it's students and specifically basing my own experience as well in ACC are coming from very diverse backgrounds. Some of them have very good schooling, educational schooling, in which a lot of these skills might already be addressed, for instance, but a lot of them are coming from very rural backgrounds, and ACC provides a neutral platform to them. And then this is where I feel again where the responsibility of tutors and the ALPs come into play, how they intend on refining their end product and making him or her uh, competent enough at least or skilled enough at least to have an equal opportunity or excel in a top tier firm, because students who are coming from good educational backgrounds, schoolings, etc., tend to, and which is my point on the on soft skills as well, tend to excel far more than students coming from less privileged backgrounds, less privileged schools. And even though the ACCA as a qualification is common for both of them, so it's basically the soft skills in which they're driving from. Nonetheless, on the intelligence part, like I said, in these roles, I'm looking after problem structuring, and of course problem solving is something which is a very hyped word as well. I mean, it's been very, it's a cliched now actually. uh, it's more about how you structure a problem. Of course problem solving is essential as a skill, but I've actually focused on the word structuring because I feel in my own individual interactions with students as well and working with them as teams. And I'm not just stating any only the ACC students. It's something which is inherent across students from multiple, even the top tier universities in the world. And as a ACCA qualification, since it's global and primarily our audience right now, so I feel if we can start focusing on how we can inculcate in them the ability to structure a problem first and then math skills. So being an accountant, math skills is something which is very important, right? And dwelling again on my own personal experience, I mean, back in the days, we were very used to calculators. Now, what I feel in my current role, and again, this is coming from my own personal experience, I at times, and usually, with this is more often than not, don't even have the luxury of using a calculator. I have to tell the solution then and there. So perform a rough mental calculation, both quickly and accurately, and I actually have to tell them then and there. I cannot be in a meeting with CFO and ask him that I need to have a calculator to do a basic calculation, for instance. And so for instance, I showed you a case study as well. So in an interview, you would be required to, at least in the finance consulting areas, be very shrewd when it comes to math skills, be very accurate as well, and be very quick too. So this is something which we can focus. I mean, our end product is a finance professional who has a holistic understanding of both the accounting and the business aspects. And most of the careers which ACCA, as being an ACCA member, I myself as well take up are uh, into very much accounting and roles, for instance, which requires very shrewd mental calculations too. So hence, this is something which we can work on as a very basic framework. What we can do is within the classroom, this is again my suggestion. I mean, it's of course up to you people how to incorporate this. We can encourage students to not rely more on calculators and actually do basic math, at least start doing basic math or calculations at least mentally. So for instance, if you're talking about basic addition, subtractions, multiplications across broader subcategories in balance sheet and in other financial statements, for instance, they need to be able to do those things mentally, accurately, quickly. You cannot expect a chartered accountant who's a member of ACCA being relying too much on calculators for even the basic calculations. So this is something at a very basic initial level you can start incorporating this. And then I've already discussed in detail about the importance of asking logical questions and assumptions and solutions as well. These are the certain things which are very imperative. These skill sets are very imperative when you are in a finance consulting role. And I managed to work for some time in pricing related roles as well during my time in Telenor. So this was again pricing for financial services domain, which is the Easy Paisa for Telenor company. Uh, Over there, one of the questions were, or one of the essential areas which I had to look after or roles was the consumer pricing. So, for instance, I had to take a lot of assumptions. In essence, I actually had to put in a lot of, I actually had to do a lot of projections on the basis of those assumptions. So projections are all on the basis of assumptions, right? And so basically, it all started with asking the logical questions, drawing out a logical analysis, and presenting a logical and a realistic solution. So at a very least, I was interviewing one candidate during my this current role, and I asked him, for instance, how do we promote a product more? So I understand this was not very much related to accounting. It was more like related to marketing aspects, but you'll be stunned, and I was stunned by his response, and he went with the same cliche that we can offer our customers more discounts, and just like that, without actually having a basis for why we would be offering that 20% sale or 30% sale, or let's suppose buy one get one free offers, without having a seasoned or a reasoned analysis at the back. So he had absolutely no clue, and he was at a decent level with 5 or 6 years of experience, and he was suggesting me in an interview that what we can do is for Easy Pesa we can do offer clients discounts. And so this was related to our Daraz collaboration as well, Daraz.keepers, and this was somewhere around 2015. And so we did come across to uh, I'll try to wrap it up over here by saying in a nutshell that even if those discounts are there, like you see that, I mean, the Raz is partnered with, let's suppose, Easy Pesa, and then if you buy a product via Easy Pesa on the Raz.pk, you'll get, let's suppose, 500 rupees off. But there is so much calculation, there are so many projections at the back, and the essential component we are looking after uh, is one thing, and which is again profitability for us. Now, this is a very subjective term. It's not just in terms of our hardcore cash profits, it's also in terms of our market capitalization and market acquisition too. So there are a lot of calculations which go. The strange thing for me was he just recommended a 15 or 20% discount without telling me why should we do it. So again, that reasoned analysis, those logical questions, and he never even asked me any of these considerations. If I can just roll back a bit up, just a second. Mm, this additional information is something you need to request from the interview. I mean, he never requested that, for instance, how do I actually proceed with this? I mean, what are the market analysis? What is our current market share? And let me just give you another example over here as well. I was interviewing one candidate again on the intelligence part. I'm sorry. Yeah, I was interviewing one candidate, and so this was a role again in this pricing related role, and so I wanted to deliver or wanted to check his thought process. how he arrives at a solution, for instance, or how he arrives at a problem, because this was something which was very important for me. So I asked him, how many cars do you think are there in Islamabad? Or this was another question as well for me. What do you think is the weight of the building? This building, I mean, the building I was sitting in at the moment. And so the so I asked these questions, some semblance of these questions from a lot of candidates, and it's been very rare that I've actually had a reasoned thought process being delivered to me without so basically the best case scenario for me was, I mean, a candidate would just guess the weight of the buildings. Okay, it would be 30 metric tons. I mean, I wouldn't want that. I want the thought process of the candidate before that. So for instance, how did he arrive? Did he when we talk about the weight of the building, did he stated that, let's suppose this building is situated on this area which has this, let's suppose, dimensions, and it all boils down to, let's suppose it has this many floors, and then this is the weight of one brick, and on average in 1 centimeter, for instance, in 1 feet, these many bricks gets laid. So for instance, if he starts talking on these terms, now I don't want the end result. I just wanted his thought process. And in my domain, I mean, this thought process is essentially something which helps you exceed and basically even survive in my particular domains. And then again, there was this one question in which I asked about the cars in Islamabad, and one person actually uh, drew a statistical analysis, and he stated that, for instance, Pakistan Bureau of Statistics says that there are, let's suppose, 500,000 cars in Islamabad. Now, I didn't want the end figure. I don't even care what Pakistan Bureau of Statistics stated. What I wanted was a reasoned analysis of how he arrived at that figure. So, for instance, he should have taken an assumption that, let's suppose, the average population, or let's suppose the total population in Islamabad is, uh, let's say, 500,000 or 1 million, right? And then the average size of a family in Islamabad is, let's suppose, four, right? So you divide 1 million by 4, and you get somewhere around 250 families for and then let's suppose the average of on average per family there is one car. So then you arrive at a problem, at a solution. So for instance, if there is one car per family, then we can reasonably say that, there are around 250,000 cars in Islamabad, something like that. I don't want the end figure. So this is what I mean by asking the logical questions and assumptions. This is crucial. And again, I'm bringing this up in front of you people. Why? Because the case study component is very much embedded in ACCA curriculum. The way we approach case studies, I mean, most of the students at least, and how we are told to approach in these case studies as well, is focusing on the end result solution. I might not be right for everyone, right? Because some of the tutors might already be inculcating these things in their candidates. A lot of you might already been doing that. So if you're lacking on this, I just wanted to give you an idea of how those case studies have a very much practical significance, right? So this is on the intelligence part. And finally, I just want, I being a recruiter, and I being an employee myself as well, and I've had the opportunity of running my own consulting firm for 2.5 years as well before I rejoined Ferguson. It's basically the business sense which matters most. Being an employee, you're just stuck to your payroll on a monthly basis. There's no kind of risk involved. And then you're not thinking, you're not innovating. And then those other quotients are not coming into play. You need to start thinking like an entrepreneur, like a boss, like you're the owner. And trust me, if you do that, I felt, and this is something, and this is one of the reasons why I'm being I was hired back as well, and then I'm delivering value for my current employer too, and for my own personal career success as well. I I take care of the business side. I think like I have a business sense. Categorically, I feel and I understand what my partners from a business perspective are thinking. What are the expectations from a business perspective? Again, so if the engagement or the wants me to put in, let's suppose, 18 or 20 hours. I was just talking to Hassan yesterday on this as well. So I'll be putting them without actually crying over the fact that I'm putting in 16, 18 hours of day every day, right? Because I know the end deliverable. I know that what's at stake over here in terms of business, not in terms of my own job, right? Because they don't just fire you on the basis that you cannot put in, let's suppose, 15 or 16 hours a day. No. But what they do is, in order to become a manager, in which I am, position in which I am currently, and even to go beyond, you need to have a business sense rather than just thinking like an employee. So just on the intelligence component part, I wanted to lay a special emphasis on these particular areas. Uh, then comes emotional intelligence. This is again an area which is very significant for me personally. Uh, what are the certain things? I feel like I'm running out of time as well. I mean, there's so much more to go over here too, but I'll try to state few of the essential things when it comes to emotional intelligence over here. For me personally, it's the empathy and social skills which a lot of ACCA students lack. And I understand this just cannot be inculcated in, so for most of the, so the way ACCA and the structuring processes, education delivery processes, uh, basically you prepare a candidate to appear in exams after 3 months, right? So this is too less of a time to actually start focusing on their social skills and empathy. What we can do as a baseline is at least try talking in between our lectures on the importance of having empathy. Empathy is basically uh, understanding another person's position. It's basically relating on an emotional level with your peers, colleagues, teammates, bosses, managers. This is very important. I believe in my domain, for instance, I've been working as part of teams. I've been leading teams, working as part of teams as well. It's very important that that team chemistry, you need everyone to be on the same frequency at least. If someone does not recognize the urgency of the deliverables or the importance, that is where the entire team suffers, right? So in team environments, collaborations, it's imperative that emotional intelligence comes into play, and this is a very fundamental point which at least the recruiters and the managers see when they for instance want to promote another person and their subordinate, or when they want to uh, trust him with a more with better responsibilities, more how should I actually put it, with more responsibilities in essence, and especially with people management. So when it comes to people management, I mean, at least in organizations such as Telenor and Ferguson, the one thing they look at is your social skills and empathy more than any other skills. So in the top tier, these are the two skills you need to have if you want to excel. I am a personal example of how I was less on a technical front uh, competent than my peers, but ended up getting those management positions which they could not. And this is the reason why I have received offers on a very serious note. I tried applying in Coca-Cola back in the day. I would never get a call, anything else, right? And the moment I started collaborating, because I was always a very social person. The moment one of my friends ended up in Coca-Cola, that's where I got three offers each year from Coca-Cola, and each year I actually had to reject them because I had a better offer elsewhere as well, right? So point I'm saying is I spent like a year and a half trying to pursue my, let's suppose, dream employer, uh, which was Coca-Cola and A. Ferguson at the time. So A. Ferguson had a recruitment process which was based on exams and etc. So luckily I made it there. In terms of Coca-Cola, for instance, I mean, you just won't get an interview call. And this is again something which I want to dwell on very categorically. I never had to give another interview after my first initial interviews with the partners. That's it. Like for instance, when I talk about an interviewer talking about a very rigorous interview process in which they are assessing me from like top to bottom. It's ever since that interview, I remember back in 2012, the only thing that's working for me is my social skills. So if I want to rotate between an employer, what I do is I reach out to a decision maker over there, which is ideally my friend, and I've got connections in all of the top companies in Pakistan and Middle East, and that's how I get everywhere.
Definitely.
So
Apologies
social
to
skills is something
interrupt.
which is important. I'm sorry?
Can you hear me? Can you hear
Yes,
me?
yes, I can hear you. I understand there is only 10 minutes left.
No, no. Actually, I was wondering if you can wrap up in next 5 minutes and
Okay,
give a recap of the key takeaways for all the attendees, and then we
yes.
can allow 5 minutes for the question and answer.
Understood. Understood. Let me just quickly wrap up on few things. And then the next component would be the creativity aspect. Again, this I can dwell on this very in very detail. However, it needs to be applied very appropriately and judiciously. Uh, so for instance, you need to do smart work rather than hard work, number one. But yes, when we're talking about creativity, we're talking about dynamism and flexibility. It's important because without that, it leads to stagnation. However, too much creativity is disruptive, and it becomes more of a bane rather than a fruitful thing. So from a student's perspective, I mean, it's okay to be creative at times, but on a realistic front, there are roles such as audit and assurance, such as taxation, in which you have to follow rules and regulations and standards, in which you just have to follow the rules rather than being creative. And in those particular roles, if you become creative, you get kind of examples like Arthur Anderson back in 2002. So this is on the creative front at least. On the vision front, I believe this is a lot. There's a lot of work which tutors can do. Even in my recent induction session, which we recruited around 15 candidates of ACCA in Ferguson in last month. So this is an area where everyone was struggling with. They had no clue of what their career vision is, of where they have landed, why they have landed over here. So in Ferguson, they are in finance consulting, let's suppose, and they have no clue what finance consulting is altogether. The only thing they know about is assurance, and they want to get into assurance. And the irony is, and this is this is something which is my own personal experience. Irony is that at the end of the day, like at the end of 3 years of your training experience, the worth of a finance consultant is easily over 100,000 easily. Like you won't even struggle finding that kind of job being a finance consultant, but being an insurance or a tax advisory person, you'll be struggling to find a 40,000 rupees job. That's the hard truth. And so they have no idea. So the only thing they know are these three areas: assurance and tax. This is, I believe, where tutors can really play their part, and they can actually say that, there are other areas. Again, I'll be leveraging on my previous conversation into this slide: embracing technology. You need to allow or tell them to embrace technology. There are new solutions such as enterprise resource planning solutions. They are very much here to stay. It's an IT centric, yes, but it has a lot of being an ACCA, being a chartered accountant, you can play a lot of, you can add a lot of value in the IT. And since I don't have time over here, I mean, I literally wanted to tell you how my own personal career has taken off. I mean, it's at rocket speed because of my basically that initial race of going into finance consulting or technology consulting with Ferguson. So I was offered a job in assurance in KPMG back in 2012, and I had already gotten into Ferguson. It had just been 1 month, 1 week actually, and I refused that role of KPMG and I went with Ferguson just because of the brand at the time, but also because I'd already had a stint in assurance and I wanted to pursue that consulting part. And ever since, I've never regretted.
Yes, apologies for interruption again. What we can
Yeah,
do is that we can plan others another session maybe next month, or we can ask the
right.
tutors. What I was drawing upon is that we have discussed two quotients in detail. One is emotional intelligence, and the second one is intelligence. So I think rest of them we can also always just giving you an idea. We can always have another session to discuss those in detail. But now, since 5 minutes are left, I would like to give chance to the tutors so that they can ask questions. There were few hands for the questions. So now I am unmuting Haris Hanif. If you have any question, please ask. Yes, Haris, you are unmute. Can you hear us? Hello. Yes, Haris, you raised the hand. I you wanted to ask some question. Okay, now I am unmuting Mr. Hussain Kazi, who also raised his hand, and I hope he did it for to ask the question. Mr. Hussain Kazi, you are now unmuted. Please, you may ask the question. I hope you guys can listen to me across. Okay, again, now I am unmuting Miss Aisha. She also has raised her hand, and I assume she has to ask a question. Miss Aisha, I've unmuted you. Please proceed with the.
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you so much, Mr. Jamshed, for explaining the whole caution thing. I just have a question that these days there is a big issue in classrooms, the lack of focus, the shorter attention span of the students. ठीक है? So, because intelligence, emotional intelligence, creative vision, digital experience comes after that. If they're not focusing, what I'm saying right now, at times ऐसा होता है क्लास में कि मैंने एक लाइन बोली होती है और मैं किसी स्टूडेंट को कहती हूँ कि रिपीट करे मेरी लाइन एंड दे नॉट लिसनिंग टू मी फॉर दिस पर्पज़ मैं मल्टीपल किस्म की जो है एक्टिविटीज़ करती तो रहती हूँ बट मुझे लगता है कि सबसे ज़्यादा मुझे इसके अंदर सफ़र करना पड़ा है बिकॉज मेरी भी अगर आप हम अगर मैं अपने ACCA की बात करूँ तो मैंने बहुत सारे पेपर्स लॉजिकल रीजनिंग और इसी के ऊपर पास किए हुए हैं ठीक है जैसे आप बता रहे थे कि जी while doing this so how can I improve the attention span of the students because they are actually you know bad at that.
Well, it's more like a question for a psychologist. This is
Yeah.
something which is very much there. I truly understand, but you know what? At the end of the day, at ACCA level, this is something which there are two sides to it. A is the teaching methodology. So, for instance, if you're already adopting a pedagogy which is very interactive, there's literally not much you can do on that front, right? And when it comes to the attention span of an individual student, I believe just let it be because he is aware of the risks. And if you're delivering a lecture at an ACCA level, at least because you're not dealing with primary or secondary school students, right? You're dealing with them, they know the risks, they know what is at stake, and that's just about it. But what I wanted to inculcate through my this session at least was how we can make them more aware of what's expected of them when they reach the job market, for instance, when they touch the job markets. And just like a final comment on this one, uh, see, the attention span, again, it's very much very centered towards the teaching pedagogy which you adopt. I'm pretty sure, or they might be listening to the hardcore math related areas, but when it comes to, let's suppose, papers such as P1, back in the days it was ethics. I'm not sure if it's still the same. Uh, one gets bored, right? So it really then depends on the teacher how to stimulate the interest of the candidates, and that's just about it. But that is not an area where I believe as a tutor you must be focusing on, because if they're not attentive to your classrooms, they don't get the concepts. For instance, they will struggle at the end of 3 months. It's a very short time span, and they'll suffer within their exam. So I believe
By doing
just let it be.
by having the chicken span they cannot do the exams thing they're not able even to answer the question जो कि मैं उनसे उस वक्त पूछ रही होती हूँ कि मुझे बताएं कि मैंने अभी
It's
क्या लाइन
interesting.
इवन लाइन रिपीट कर दें सो उसके अंदर मैं आप बता रहे हैं कि इसको इंटरेस्टिंग बनाना मेरी जिम्मेदारी है बट ऑलरेडी मैं इसके लिए बहुत कुछ कर रही हूँ तो समथिंग अगर आपकी साइड से कोई ऐसी
True.
चीज़ है जो आप बता सकें फौरन.
So it's interesting. The only thing is, you can, if you're adapting that pedagogy, so then that's it. But the interesting thing is, even I could not answer, for instance, not like repeat a line of what the tutor said, but
Okay.
if there was some things you wanted me to answer, but I won't be able to answer just like that.
Okay.
But again, I get your concern. I get your concern.
I can
I don't
chip
think so.
in.
This is something you need to be very much worried about, being a tutor at an ACCA level.
Yeah, if I can also chip in, Aisha, I think as Jamshed rightly mentioned that we can be tutors and not psychologists, obviously, and there are so many reasons why a student is demonstrating signs of lack of focus. It might be temporary on that very day due to a certain personal reason he is going through. It might be a continuous thing, and if it is a continuous thing, assuming that, and Jamshed rightly said that it's only a matter of 3 to 4 months. He will be failing the exam and he will drop out. So eventually, the critical part is that all those students who are scoring good marks, 70%, more than 70% in foundation diploma, let's say, they would have less of this issue. And if some student has got more reports, this issue being reported in him, so I believe that he is very right. He has only 3 to 4 months to go, and he will not be able to pass the exam because if there is such sheer lack of focus. Meanwhile, I have another question from Mr. Kashif Kamran. Thank you very much for your question. The question, Jamshed, is what should be the first priority for ACC students in terms of soft skills? And as an employer, apart from technical quotient and ethical quotient, what is the first thing employers scan in an ACC affiliate?
I can tell you what I do it, and I've been hiring people in Telenor, uh, both in Pakistan and abroad, and then I've been hiring people a part of the hiring process, and then in Ferguson as well, right? And this is what I do. Literally at my front, for instance, at least from accountants, I ask them to write something on the piece of paper. So their written expression is something I pay a lot of attention to. Why? Because in top tiers, a lot of stuff is carried out over emails. And if they are not competent enough to write the right emails, I mean, I really cannot improve a person's English being an employer, right? And then I cannot really review every email he's sending out before doing it. So one thing is that, I mean, this is something again which ACCA, since it's in English, since the entire examination syllabus in English, is something is being addressed already. But I guess the writing part is something which even the tutors would at present be having a struggle with as well. Like for instance, they can most of the students are very good on the technical front when it comes to math skills, but in terms of explaining what these ratios, let's suppose, actually mean in English, plain and simple English, they're having struggle on that. So one thing is written expression. The other thing is basically communication. And I mean not just the verbal English or spoken English. I actually mean ability to get your message across. Like for instance, I literally have people who just raise their hands. They want to ask a question or they have an observation, but just stumble in doing that. You cannot hire such people, irrespective of whether they, they have a very sound skill set at top tier firms at least. And then the third part, for instance, again, I reiterate, is the way they are dressed and the way they carry themselves. Like I've if you can see the slide right now, I've mentioned employers are increasingly looking for the right fit between the company and the candidate. So, for instance, when I got hired in Telenor, I got hired in Coca-Cola. I was sitting in front of CFO in Coca-Cola Beverages Pakistan Limited back in 2013, and I went through four business heads the entire induction process. This was again, I mean, initiated by my friend, but I went through four business heads, and so they all approved. And when I was sitting in front of the ACCA, in front of the CFO, and he asked me, "Okay, tell me, Jamshed, Mr. Jamshed, why should I hire you?" And at the time, I mean, I had just qualified, I became a member, and I was like, "I'm an ACCA member. I've done this, I've done this. I'm from Ferguson, blah blah blah." But he was like, "Yeah, I understand that it's all on the CV, but why should I hire you? You do understand we got a lot of applications from ACCAs, right? And a lot of them have a very similar background. So why should I hire you?" And then at the time, I had no reason answer to that, right? But eventually, I understood what he was asking, and he eventually got me an offer. Why? Because I was kind of a right fit, and that should have been the right answer. Like I gelled into their culture. You cannot have a person who's acting like an idiot in a top tier company, and so that right fit is not there. You cannot really have, if I use plain and simple words, a very desi person in a very multinational culture. You're looking for the right fit. So I guess these are the three components which I'm looking literally at the very start. A candidate comes in, he sits in front of me in an interview. These are the three things I'm looking at. So again, on my part, I mean, it's not the hard skills or technical skills I'm looking after. It's at the start, it's just the soft skills.
Thank you very much, Jamshed. I hope, Mr. Kashif, this answers your question. If there is any other question, please raise your hand. If any other individual is having any other question, although there are hand raised from Shazeb Sheikh, I am once again unmuting Shazeb if you would like to ask any question. Okay, you have self-muted yourself now. If you could unmute yourself.
Hear me?
Yeah,
Yeah,
I can hear you.
please go. Please go ahead with the question.
No, I cannot hear you.
Yeah, Shazib, please unmute yourself again. You've self-muted yourself. Yeah, that's now, it's good now. Please go ahead.
Yeah, I've unmuted myself. Can you hear me?
Yeah, yeah, I can hear
Yes,
you.
yes.
Okay, sure. I would like to say that I basically work on people's development coming into the starting papers of the like level of the ACCA. So whenever we get the like what I refer as the junk of the market, because some of them become doctors, some of them becomes engineer, then they come over, and as a collective, as you said, that ACCA becomes a beacon, a neutralization ground for all of them. So whenever all of them come, not all of them are fit for ACCA. Not all of them can pursue something like that. Some people might come up because I ask them, why are they in ACCA in the first place? They say that our brother said this, we didn't find anything else. So how and what can we do, or can we deny any one of them or tell them that something is not right for them? Either of the question, that they can pass ACS exams with hard work and all, but at the end they might not be happy with it, or they might not be, like as you said, that you would have not been at your point, Mr. Jamshed, if you had been in an assurance role with the digitalization and all. So how can we like career counsel them and give them a separate time? Because as you know, in a class there are more than 30 students, and in big and good teachers, and in higher teachers, higher tier teachers class, there are more than 100 students. How can we elaborate and define each and every student that they are or they might not be fit for ACCA?
So
So
as I
before,
had to actually
with
teach to this role,
just a
slide.
quick announcement. Apologies to interrupt. There is a quick poll, guys. Please do vote so that we can, make sure that the future sessions are more tailored to your expectations. Thank you very much. Please, Jamshed, over to you.
Just I never got a chance to dwell on this particular slide more on my thoughts as well. But this is that component which I really wanted you guys again to focus on the as well. I mean, it's good that you have asked this question. Not everyone is here because he chose to be here, right? And I can be a testament to that fact because I was going into a very different role, and I was pursuing Oxford University, and I had to be there, and when everything spanned out, and just at the last moment, for instance. So I got 11 A's. I got like all the A's. I mean, there was needed. I got the SATs and everything was done. And I just had a change of heart, and I was like, yeah, I'm going for a bachelor's in accounting and finance, right? So why not at the end of a bachelor's in accounting and finance, it's the same people who end up after their bachelor's in accounting finance go for the qualification, which is an ACC or an ICW, right? And and that ACC ICW was offered over here in Pakistan as well. That's how I got to know about ACCA at the first place, right? So I actually knew where I wanted to be, and then it was only a matter of should I pursue a bachelor's or a professional qualification. A bachelor's wouldn't have equipped me the way, even if it had been from Oxford. In a way which ACCA had, and right after Oxford as well. I mean, you would have landed in a top or a big four consulting firm, which I nonetheless did in Pakistan as well. So you see, for me, if you have a clear vision or an idea or a semblance of an idea what you want to do, and where your interests, hobbies are. I mean, for me, if I wasn't a medical rejectee or an engineer, I couldn't get into an engineering college, for instance, which is why I end up choosing an ACCA. And if you have, I mean, this is a harsh reality as well. There's no entrance criteria in ACCA or CA, which is the ICAP for that matter. A lot of people come in because they have not been inducted into their dream roles and into dream universities, for instance, and so they try their luck at ACCA. But it's very important to have a word with them, at least at your level, and try chalking out a career vision for them. Apprise them. I mean, I would have loved or I would have benefited a lot had there been something on this front back in the days when I was an ACCA student, right? So the only thing I used to hear was being an ACCA person, or for instance, in that was one of the big four's name and only assurance. I had no idea what finance consulting was. I had no idea what other big fours were. I had no idea, and this is something coming from my personal experience. Where would I be in 10 years other than having just the title of a CFO, let's suppose, right? So the only title I knew in the job market was a finance manager or a CFO. Where should every ACCA be? He should become a CFO. That's it. And now, I mean, 10 years down the lane, it's far more fun being a consultant, and a manager in consultant is already so my very third year I started taking meetings with C level, right? And ever since I've been advising the C level. So for instance, even the CFOs, they're asking me, my team, for instance, and since I'm now the engagement manager, for advices on so many fronts in which they can't come up with their solutions. So you see, there's a path for everyone, but you need to apprise them. You need to tell them What are the potential opportunities? A lot of you already have a lot of experience. You have colleagues which have already taken up jobs in corporate sector. For you specifically, you chose not to do it. Why? Because most of you thought and feel that education, academia is there for you. Like academia is your forte. You are more best suited in your own personal capacities and capabilities in the academia industry rather than the, let's suppose, the corporate industry or the consulting aspects or the assurance aspects, right? So this is a personal decision for you people. Just apprise them of this. A lot of you have worked in the industries for 5 6 years, maybe 10 years, maybe 8 years, and then come back in the teaching role. So it's okay, but just tell them, try it. Now since you said that there are like around 60 80 100 people, so just being a one on, I mean, instead of having a one-on-one session with everyone, for instance, that is not humanly possible. Just try talking about in between your lectures arbitrarily in like 5 6 minutes, 2 minutes, of where in each particular role can your target career be. So for instance, back in the days, I still remember when I was studying P1, that is how one of my tutors, for instance, back in the days, she told me what is a CIA, a certified internal auditor, how much, and that he can become a company secretary, how much a company secretary actually earns, and something like that. So this is another role which I was apprised of during my study other than the CFO, right? So these are certain things you can do, but I haven't gotten a chance to go through this slide in detail and dwell on more personal experiences, which would have given you a more semblance of an idea. Shortage of time, like I said, like Hassan said, there needs to be a poll, and maybe we can have another session on other competencies or areas, quotients.
There is another question from Kashif Kamran, and he says that what sort of self-investment can a student do in soft skills? How can he build upon, or how you build it upon for him? So the self-investment thing.
It's pretty interesting. I'll tell you this one thing. So my entire education has been in American schools and in British schools in Pakistan, right? And I appeared for O levels, and before that, I was with in an American high school. So I've been. My teachers were all foreigners. Everything was there, and even in terms of my English, everything was sound. Yet in 2014, I guess, if I'm not wrong, I took a 2 months quick fresher course in English, in spoken English. My spoken English, I mean, you've all listened to my spoken English, right? But I still did that. I believe the best investment is nonetheless, I mean, it's very cliched as well, it's in education. Uh, that is a very short version of it, and I've dwelled on my own personal example too. Even if you're very good in certain skills, please just go ahead and take another course on that. One more thing I did, and which is again very important for me, in 2017 and 18, I extensively opened High School English Grammar by Renan Martin. I studied basics of grammar, English, writing, punctuations, commas, everything. I was already rectifying and basically overviewing and correcting my colleagues' errors in emails, in documentations, etc., etc. But still, I actually went ahead and took a fresher course, and I did it for 2 years, and in a very dedicated manner, not like an on and off manner. If you ask me what's a punctuation mark, if you ask me where to use, what's the difference between a hyphen and a dash, I mean, they both look the same. I can tell you that. I'm telling you this why? Because at my level, at least right now, I mean, a lot is dependent on PowerPoint presentations. Number one. Number two, English grammar. Whatever you're writing, it's being reviewed by the top level management of the client. You cannot have basic English level grammar mistakes. You cannot have. So the terminology itself needs to be so clear. You cannot. It cannot be ambiguous. So I guess the response to Kashif's question would be, and if this is something which I'm doing as well, and I feel no ashamed in it, and I'll keep on doing it, other than updating myself on current accounting practices. I mean, student accounting is something which no one really cares about. I mean, I get it. I wasn't in assurance role, but up until recently, I again started looking at it. And at least keep yourself apprised with the latest developments. It's there for a reason. Most of the cases, like I was doing an IFRS 15 implementation in one of the clients, and then again, I mean, it's 16 as well, 17. So I need to know these things. Now I'm very much in technology and finance consulting roles, but I need to know accounting. Even yesterday night, I was sitting with the team which was drafting policies and procedures, draft policies and procedures of the client. And they literally asked me from a technology perspective my input, but I was giving them an input on accounting entries of how capitalization work in process actually works. So this is important, that you have an idea of basically your basics. I won't say that since I'm in technology and finance consulting, I've lost touch with, I don't know accounting standard, I don't know auditing standards. I know them. And I might even know them better than most of the students who are actually appearing for the exams. And I can say it for sure. Why? Because I'm delivering them in actual reality. So, I mean, I can dwell on my role and embracing technology and how my role actually fits in. And it's not just the uh, thing, but in short, I guess it's education, self-education. Just please do that and keep on doing it. Your learning process should not end with your final exam in ACCA. Yes, you can take a break for 6 months, dwell over it for like a year, but the CPD is there for a reason. And I can tell you from my own personal experience, I mean, those things are there. I was in Ferguson and I actually had to fill in my CPD. Uh, Sorry, my actually practical experience requirements, those questionnaires. I guess they were 14 questionnaires at the time. Uh, so I actually had to do a lot of thought process and what went in, and I used to had to dwell on my past experiences. So that was one learning after a while, after like around 2.5, 3 years. And then afterwards, I mean, in my current role as well, like I said, I never got a chance of explaining. There's a lot of research and development which is involved. And what it does is, again, it puts you right back to your student career. Like, I review documents, I prepare documents. In order to prepare them, I'm reading almost like, at least in any given day, I'm actually reading hardcore student content related to standards, accounting and finance and etc., technology frameworks, etc. um, at least 4 to 5 hours a day, every day I'm going doing that research. So please put in more effort over there in that front, in self education.
Thank Thank you so much, Shahzeb. There is a question, and obviously it's a very self-explanatory thing I can answer. Shahzeb has asked your name. So the name of the speaker is Jamshed Hayat. A 74% vote has so far been recorded, guys. If anybody has still not voted yet, I would request please provide your input so that we can tailor the sessions in future as per your expectations. Now we intend to deliver at least one session, one such session every month from now onwards. So you should be positively expecting another session in the month of November. We can also increase the frequency, but it will all depend upon your feedback, how frequently you guys would like to hear from us on these fronts. Uh, I will be sending a post webinar email to run a survey as well. So do take part in that survey. Help us understand what your expectations are in terms of listening on different topics, so that you can have idea about different things that will certainly help you, support you in your day-to-day role. Any other question? And I hope I have not missed anyone's question. If I have, let me see it again. Okay, Mr. Jangir Green has left. Any other individual, any question, please raise your hand so that I can unmute you. Aisha, your hand is still up. Do you still have any question?
No, 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 no. Sorry. I do not have any question. Thank you.
Uh, Okay, I hope I am not missing out on any particular question for now. So once again, I would like to thank all of you who took time out, and it was a great participation to begin with. We were having 30 individuals or 29, 30 tutors. Thank you very much, all of you, for taking time out. I hope it added value, and we will be asking you on the survey as well. Thank you very much, Jamshed. It was an honor to have you with us. I know things were very crazy for you during all these days, but thank God we were able to manage and managed it very well. So I'll be speaking to you soon. Anything you want to add or say or give a message on the closing, Jamshed? Over to you.
It's just like I've been able to address two questions at
Yeah,
least. I mean, and they're pretty important ones. Like on the intelligence point, I've literally stated what is required, and I've tried
yeah,
keeping it on a very student-related content. And then the emotional intelligence again is something which is so important, and it helps
yeah,
literally does wonders for a candidate. It is not his knowledge; it is those soft skills we
yeah,
routinely see, and this is something tutors can apprise students on as well. We routinely hear that in every other organization you need to have a reference. So see, what we're talking about is a professional reference, and those
yeah,
professional references, you develop those professional references, yeah, a through your work, of course, in teams,
yeah,
and all of those intelligence and other questions will come into play. But b, most importantly, because of who you are as a person, the personality. Like if you're fun to be around, if you don't stink,
yeah.
like there's so many things I can actually go around, and which a professional chartered accountant is there sitting on a meeting, you can't sit right next to him because he's thinking. Like, that basic hygiene needs to be there. And so these are the areas through which you develop your PR, and through PR, you won't need to actually apply it to in another organization and take another interview. Because even in my interviews, for instance, what happens is, "Hi, how are you? How are things going? Blah 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 blah. ABC XYZ things." It's not technical, nothing whatsoever, and they know me already through a lot of areas, and then that's just about it. And you end up getting a job offer. So you don't have to apply, you
True,
don't have to do anything, and you end up securing all of those accesses, which otherwise people are like, okay, the safarish chalegi, the ye chalega. You need to have a reference. You can't go in there. I can vouch for that, and I literally can vouch for that. I mean, it's all about your PR. Please
true, true.
try inculcating these messages in students. You're already doing wonders on the education front. They are lagging behind on their social skills. All they see immediately after work is that after education is they need to work, and then they become kind of social pariahs, basically outcasts. I'm sorry, and then they're not socializing, they're not going out. I mean, if you ask them for anything, they're just like, they're not basically participating in the teams and going with the flow, and that emotional intelligence again comes into play. You need to have that. You need to have that. You cannot succeed without it, especially if you're a people manager, if you become aim to become one in a top tier organization. I can tell you for sure, these two organizations I've been in, they don't do it. They do not do it. If they're making a people manager, they do not want to make lives miserable for the rest of the devotees. So they won't do it unless you are social, unless you have certain skills. And I'm not only talking about communication skills, I'm talking about these social skills.
Yeah,
Please have a
totally,
word about
totally.
these things as well. Tell them that ACCA in a classroom, this is something I regret as well at times. Like I said, we were a bunch of five people, so we kind of kept it to that. What I should have done was I should have reached out to more people, my classmates, my batch mates. I should have developed networks, contacts, had fun at the time. But and I did have a lot of fun. I did it from Scans, and I was the president of Scans Student Council as well. We initiated it in 2009. So I was the second president actually, and we did a lot of shows. We did a lot of arranged a lot of concerts, etc., and that helped me build a huge, massive PR. A lot of people already knew me, and still know me. A lot of
Okay, and
teachers, I mean, they just know me. So
sorry for
do that.
interruption. So that we have another question from Zainab Abbas. Some good personality development and self-help books that you would recommend for students.
So I'm not a book person, by the way, straight up front. I mean, I'll
Oh,
acknowledge that. I've always hated books, but so I cannot name you the name of the authors. But what I can do is for sure have a good social circle. This is what helped me
yeah.
build my own social skills. So, for instance, in my social circle, I'll just tell you in very, very plain and simple words. Uh, and this is not to say that one language has a preference over the other, but I've got a social circle in which people are a lot of them talk in English, number one, and on an everyday front. And I'm not stereotyping anything, but I'm just stating you the hard facts. A lot of them are professionals with good ethics, values, and a lot of them have the same social skills. Kind of, we're on the same path, which is why we are like hanging out together. A lot of them are already directors and managers in top tier organizations, and we already hang out on a personal level. So if you're interacting with the right people, and not just people at a higher up positions, if you're interacting, I know them from scratch from my school days, right? So if you're interacting with people and who have polished personalities, who have developed those personalities, that's actually the best way to learn. If you want to take tips from books, I mean, you can just Google them right now. Why go through like?
Yeah.
But
And
again,
also,
I won't question into the relevance of books, it's my shortcoming. I need to start reading about books. I know the value there, and it's my shortcoming. I can actually recognize it over here too. I need to do that. But something which has worked for me thus far is having a good sound social circle. It literally
Yeah,
helps polish your personalities.
totally agreed. Social circle matters. Zainab, you can also recommend, there is one book by the name How to Make Friends and Influence People. It's a very famous book by Dale Carnegie, not very expensive as well. So he was also a psychologist. He had a research on these things. So yes, I would totally agree. Action matters more than reading a book. So you need to meet and greet with the right people even after your work. So I would totally agree with Jamshed. But even if you feel that there is a need to recommend a book, so this is the one which I can refer. I hope this answers any other question. Let me see quickly. Great. We have got 82% of the poll. Anyone missing, please poll before I close this session. Thank you very much, all of you, once again. Uh, okay, great. Thank you, Jamshed, once again.
Welcome.
Thank you very much.
Thank
See you soon, inshallah, back in Lahore.
Inshallah.
Uh,
Inshallah.
and thank you very much, everybody else. Take care. Have a very
Thank you.
good
Bye.
weekend, all of you. Allah Hafiz.
Allah Hafiz.